There's a very interesting article in the New York Times questioning the need for long-term antidepressant therapy. What I've found over the last 25 years working with chronically ill patients is that oftentimes patients are put on an antidepressant and they're left on that antidepressant for decades, sometimes their entire life. And a lot of times patients will realize they don't need that antidepressant anymore, but when they try to come off that antidepressant, they have withdrawal symptoms. They feel terrible, flu-like symptoms, headaches, feel really down, feel really numbed out, and they feel like, okay, maybe that medicine was helping me. And it's not so much that you need the antidepressant, it's the fact that you're coming off of it and you're having a withdrawal symptom. Now, there's certainly a time and place for antidepressants. I wrote a whole book about treating and beating anxiety and depression with a thing called orthomolecular medicine, a term coined by Linus Pauling, who came up with a term about using the right chemicals that the body is missing, either the right doses, sometimes high doses, but the right missing doses of vitamins, minerals, amino acids, essential fatty acids, and other building blocks that make the hormones in the body. The people who really took that orthomolecular medicine model and really put it out into the public and were very successful with it initially were psychiatrists. And they used high doses, but safe doses of amino acids and B vitamins, vitamins and minerals to help their patients overcome their mood disorders, anxiety, depression, even things like schizophrenia and a bipolar disorder. Again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. If you're taking an antidepressant, and 1 in 6 Americans are, you need to realize that those medications don't make serotonin. They don't make dopamine. They don't make norepinephrine. Even, if you're taking a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, but you become so depleted in serotonin, it's like taking a gasoline additive. You're taking this medication to help you hang on to the serotonin that you have. But if there's nothing there to reuptake, it really doesn't do much. And this is really kind of why I see what happens with my patients over the years. They may get on an antidepressant, which is maybe helpful initially. But then after 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, either they really don't need it anymore because there's a situational depression or anxiety that they were in and they're no longer in. They've gotten themselves out of it. Or they found that the medication is really not working anymore. And what happens is the longer you're on these medications, the more likely you are to develop this thing called downregulation, where your body has less and less receptor sites for this antidepressant. And so it quits working. Now, a lot of times patients will go from Paxil to, after they've gained quite a bit of weight, Paxil is notorious, as are some other antidepressants for causing weight gain, but they may move from Paxil to Lexapro, or maybe they go from that to Effexor or, one of these other medications that are out there. And there'll be a new antidepressant coming out, I'm sure, next month. There's multiple ones out there. They all are trying to say that they're different, they work better, but they're all very much similar. They're either a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor designed to help you reuptake and hang on to serotonin, or they're serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor designed to help you hang on to serotonin and norepinephrine. Serotonin is the happy hormone. It's very calming, relaxing. Norepinephrine is very stimulating. They both have their place. And there is a time and place for antidepressants. I'm not saying that. What I'm sharing is, in this conversation is for you to realize that oftentimes these medications should not be used long-term and that there are other options. So in my book, Treating and Beating Anxiety and Depression with Orthomolecular Medicine, I talk about monoamino-therapy. See, these neurotransmitters, whether it's serotonin or norepinephrine, come from amino acids that are in our proteins. So it should be coming from our diet. When we eat a protein, whether that's a hamburger patty or a block of cheese or a handful of nuts, the protein in those foods have amino acids. The amino acid that makes serotonin is L-tryptophan. When L-tryptophan is combined with certain B vitamins, B6, B5, B3, B12, and magnesium and vitamin C, it turns into serotonin. That's where it comes from. No one has a Prozac deficiency. You may have an amino acid deficiency. You may have a B vitamin deficiency, and probably do, as most people in Western Hemisphere do, from there, especially here in America with the sad American diet. The standard American diet is notoriously deficient in certain B vitamins and minerals, including magnesium, by the way. So you don't have a antidepressant deficiency, but you may have the building blocks needed to make these hormones. They may be deficient. Norepinephrine comes from the amino acid L-phenylalanine and L-tyrosine, which are stimulating. When they're combined with B vitamins, magnesium, and vitamin C, they turn into norepinephrine or epinephrine. And that is a stimulating brain chemical that gives us drive, ambition, zip, makes us more focused and ambitious. If you become deficient in these amino acids, and it can be due to a genetic glitch, just the way that God made you. But if you become deficient in these amino acids, either through poor diet or drugs that you're taking that are preventing the absorption of certain amino acids, one of those drugs would be acid blocking medications, proton pump inhibitors. But if you become deficient in these amino acids or these B vitamins from eating processed foods and a very, junk-based diet, then you can start to develop the symptoms of anxiety and depression. And when that happens, rather than reaching for an antidepressant that has potential side effects, ironically, being anxiety and depression, diffuse achy pain, brain fog, weight gain, low libido, low sex drive, you can do it naturally. And I go into detail on my podcast. You can see some of the podcast episodes where I go into detail about using orthomolecular medicine, using monoamino to treat and overcome anxiety and depression. But you can learn more about the podcast at my YouTube channel, Super Healthy Human. You can, wherever you listen to your podcast, or that's Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to it, you can certainly check it out there. And then you also please check out my website, superhealthyhuman.com, where you can see blogs and articles where I go into detail about how to use over-the-counter amino acids and vitamins and minerals, essential fatty acids to help you deal with chronic illness, including anxiety and depression. Don't stop your medication. As the article in the New York Times today pointed out pretty clearly, that's not something you need to do on your own. You need to work with a physician, and you need to do it and I will emphasize this, very slowly. Some of my patients working with me, it may take a year for some of the medications out there, like Cymbalta being a notorious one, Effexor being another one. Others you can probably come off a little faster within months instead of a year. But having said that, you always want to work with a practitioner, and you want to do it very, very slowly. At the same time, with my patients, as I'm helping them wean off these antidepressants, I'm putting them on over-the-counter amino acids and vitamins and minerals and essential fatty acids they need to make those brain chemicals, so they don't have to depend on a synthetic pill that's really acting kind of like a gasoline additive. If you're running on, with an empty gasoline tank and you put a gasoline additive in there, like an antidepressant, it's really not going to do much. The same thing if you're using a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor and there's really nothing there to reuptake, it's not going to do much. So I hope that kind of, gives you something to think about. And I want to encourage you to learn more about that, because many of you have probably tried to get off your antidepressants and have failed just because you didn't know how to do that. So there's all kind of resources at superhealthyhuman.com, as well as on my podcast and YouTube channel, Super Healthy Human. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Super Healthy Human with Dr. Roger Murphy. Remember, your body is designed to heal. It just needs the right tools. Stay curious. Stay consistent. Stay super healthy. If this episode helped you, leave a review or share it with someone who's ready to take charge of their health. The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your physician before making changes to your health regimen. This content does not substitute medical care.